Have you ever questioned if true financial success is merely an illusion, or if we're all chasing the same elusive objective? Regardless of age or era, it seems many individuals unwittingly stumble into an identical, pervasive challenge. Take Robert, 68, who diligently worked his entire life, securing a beautiful suburban home in the 80s and raising a family. For a long time, his life appeared perfectly resolved. Then, there's Karen, 52, a mother of two with a thriving marketing career, enjoying annual vacations and driving a luxury car. She outwardly projected an image of complete success. Next, Marcus, 38, diligently paid off student loans, observing friends purchase homes beyond his reach. He spent weekends on experiences, questioning his savings goals. Finally, Zoe, 24, a digital native with a side hustle and 3 months into investing. She's remarkably the most financially aware young adult in her family's history. These 4 people represent distinct generations, each navigating entirely different economic realities and life circumstances. Yet despite their varied backgrounds, every single one of them eventually fell victim to the exact same underlying trap. It wasn't a similar pitfall, nor a loosely comparable challenge. It was precisely the same snare, simply manifesting differently across the decades. By the conclusion of this video, you will undoubtedly recognize which particular version of this trap you are currently experiencing. Let's now explore what this trap truly is, but first I want to emphasize a crucial point before its name is revealed. This phenomenon has absolutely no connection to being irresponsible or inherently bad with your personal finances. In fact, many individuals caught in this situation are quite meticulous, carefully budgeting and thoughtfully planning their expenditures. This particular predicament is far more cunning and insidious than simple financial mismanagement would suggest. At some point for every generation, the world subtly defined what doing well truly meant. This often included a specific kind of home or a particular lifestyle. Yet, this understanding wasn't directly taught. Instead, it was absorbed implicitly by everyone. We all unconsciously internalize these ideals without anyone explicitly instructing us on them. They seeped into our awareness through our social circles, cultural norms, and celebrated achievements. Consequently, once financial capacity allowed, people naturally adopted this version of success. It felt like an entirely organic and necessary progression in their lives, a logical next step. This wasn't a choice born of avarice or imprudence on their part. Rather, it was simply following the unwritten guidelines passed down by one's generation. These societal norms remained unquestioned, as everyone else seemed to abide by them too. The true challenge lies in discerning this pattern from an internal perspective. From within, it invariably appears as a prudent decision, signaling growth and responsibility. Now let's examine individual generational stories to identify when these unspoken rules emerged. By recognizing these dynamics in others, you'll begin to see their reflection in your own life. Consider Robert, for instance, who spent his childhood observing his parents' lifelong renting. In the post-war era, owning a home was the ultimate sign of accomplishment, representing stability and status. Thus, upon securing his first good job, Robert naturally took on the largest mortgage a bank would approve. This decision, made during the 1980s, actually held a certain logic at the time. While interest rates were high, so was inflation, and property values were consistently appreciating, making the home a solid investment. Indeed, this proved true. Robert's home is now valued at 4 times its original purchase price, making him appear wealthy on paper. However, the situation becomes complex, as Robert, now 68, has the majority of his net worth tied up in the very walls he lives within. His anticipated pension never fully materialized, a consequence of his company's restructuring in the 1990s. While he possesses some savings, they are far from sufficient to comfortably fund a potential 25 years of retirement. Selling his house would mean abandoning the neighborhood he's called home for 4 decades, a deeply emotional prospect. The house itself was not the problem. Rather, the underlying belief that this home constituted his entire financial strategy became the true snare. For decades, Robert diligently maintained the outward symbols of wealth, his house, garden, and extensions, while neglecting other financial pillars. His visible accomplishments were undeniable, yet the foundation beneath them suffered from significant gaps. Karen's financial trap, by contrast, was much more subtle and, in some ways, more insidious. It wasn't a single grand choice, but rather a culmination of countless small, seemingly reasonable decisions. Her generation, Gen X, came of age alongside the rise of dual-income households, aspiring to surpass their parents' financial achievements. They certainly achieved higher earnings, fulfilling that particular ambition. However, with every salary increase Karen received, and there were many, her lifestyle expanded commensurately to match it. At 32, a promotion meant upgrading her vehicle, and by 38, reaching a 6-figure income led to a larger home. As her children entered secondary school, international vacations became a regular addition to their family life. Each of these individual choices seemed perfectly logical and well-deserved at the time, given her increased earnings. This phenomenon is widely known as lifestyle creep, a modern iteration of an older financial pitfall. The true issue wasn't her spending itself, but rather that her expenditures escalated at the same rapid pace as her income. Consequently, even though she earned significantly more than her parents, her savings rate remained largely unchanged. The margin between her earnings and her spending stayed consistently narrow, simply operating at higher financial figures. Now 52, Karen outwardly projects an image of financial success, possessing both equity and substantial assets. However, with retirement looming in just a decade, her financial calculations are far more precarious than expected for someone with 2 decades of strong earnings. For her generation, the hallmark of success was a desirable lifestyle, characterized by premium possessions and enriching experiences. They consistently funded this aspirational image, making monthly payments to maintain their perceived status. Let's now turn our attention to Marcus. To any millennials watching, it's crucial to acknowledge this first point. The economic system genuinely presented unique and unfair challenges to your generation through no fault of your own. The 2008 financial crisis devastated the nascent careers of countless individuals, precisely when they should have been establishing their financial groundwork. This significant setback was a very real and impactful barrier for many, leading into the trap millennials would face. Given the significant obstacles they faced, millennials encountered a specific predicament that, understandably, made perfect sense at the time. When traditional markers of success like home ownership, retirement funds, or substantial assets became unattainable, people began investing in what was within their reach. For this generation, that often translated into experiences, travel adventures, dining out, attending concerts, various subscriptions, and prioritizing convenience. This shift was strongly endorsed by prevailing cultural narratives, which encouraged spending on experiences over material possessions. Slogans like, "You can't take money to the grave," and "Live your life," became prevalent, championed by lifestyle brands and social media alike. Every major platform and influencer suggested this was a more enlightened financial path, dismissing older generations' focus on tangible wealth. Marcus, for instance, dedicated his late 20s and early 30s to accumulating these very memories, which were, by all accounts, genuinely beautiful. However, at 38, he possesses minimal investments and no property, often managing a subtle dread about the future by planning his next getaway. The real issue wasn't the enjoyment of experiences itself, rather, it was using them as a replacement for building concrete financial assets. What made this particularly insidious was an entire cultural movement validating this approach as genuine wisdom. The new symbol of achievement for millennials became a life well lived, evidenced by a passport full of stamps and engaging personal stories. This idea was marketed with such effectiveness that many failed to realize it was merely a different form of superficial display. It was a new costume, distinct in appearance, yet serving the identical function of signaling status without true foundational security. Now let's turn our attention to Zoe. Her situation is particularly intriguing because Generation Z stands out as the most financially savvy generation ever. They grew up witnessing firsthand the economic realities faced by their predecessors, shaping their understanding of money from an early age. This cultural trend cleverly disguised the true pitfall, using travel and experiences as a stand-in for genuine asset accumulation. Society even presented this approach as a form of profound wisdom, validating a path that subtly diverted from financial security. What makes Zoe's generation so fascinating is their unprecedented financial understanding from an early age. Many Gen Z individuals, even by 19, are well versed in complex concepts like index funds and casually discussed compound interest. One might assume such financial literacy would shield them completely from similar pitfalls, but that isn't entirely the case. In fact, Gen Z's particular version of this trap is arguably the most overt yet, largely due to its pervasive online presence. Their indicator of success isn't a home or extensive travel, but rather a meticulously curated aesthetic. This involves the perfect outfit, an impressive tech arrangement, or an apartment ideally suited for online presentation. It's about showcasing brands that loudly proclaim, "I possess style, I have wealth, I've achieved success." All of this is broadcast to thousands of followers, serving as their public declaration of arrival in the digital sphere. The truly ironic part is that Gen Z engages in these displays while simultaneously participating in investing. Zoe, for instance, maintains a stocks and shares ISA, diligently contributing £50 monthly, a commitment she rightfully takes pride in. Yet she also allocates £200 monthly to items primarily valued for their visual appeal on social media feeds. The pitfall for Gen Z isn't a lack of knowledge, but rather the compulsion to perform and project an image. They understand financial jargon but sometimes leverage it to perform affluence instead of genuinely constructing it. This pattern highlights that the issue for Generation Z isn't a lack of financial knowledge, but rather the pressure to project an image. They grasp financial terminology but sometimes use it to display wealth rather than actively building it, often talking about investing while their actual savings remain modest. Despite these tendencies, Zoe is far from being in a dire situation. At 24, she's already financially ahead of where Marcus was at the same age. However, the same old trap persists, merely updated with modern trappings like ring lights and carefully curated social media backgrounds. So we have 4 individuals across 4 decades all facing the same fundamental challenge. How do people genuinely break free from it? Indeed, every generation has individuals who recognize this pitfall and successfully navigated around it, finding their way to financial independence. When examining their distinct approaches, a consistent theme emerges. They deliberately distinguish between superficial appearances and true substance. They consciously chose to appear less affluent than they actually were, allowing their genuine wealth to accumulate at a much faster rate. This meant delaying outward displays of status, opting for an older car, staying in a modest home, or foregoing certain trips and aesthetic upgrades. They then invested the saved difference into assets that compounded over time, a simple yet counterintuitive strategy that goes against our social instincts. For Robert, escaping the trap would have involved retaining his home while aggressively funding his pension, avoiding over-reliance on a single asset. Karen's path would be to allow 1 lifestyle upgrade per pay raise, banking the remaining half to ensure her income growth outpaced her spending. Marcus could have limited himself to 1 major trip annually instead of 4, consistently directing the saved money into an index fund without overthinking it. Zoe, with ample time still on her side, could shift her social media focus to her investing journey, rather than just aesthetic displays. Her goal should be to build her actual financial portfolio faster than she constructs the visual perception of her wealth. Ultimately, the fundamental principle for true financial freedom, if you seek one, is clear. Prioritize accumulating assets over immediate lifestyle upgrades. This isn't a temporary suggestion, but a consistent approach to be applied in every financial decision. It's not about perpetual deprivation, but rather a strategic choice until your investments generate sufficient income to genuinely support your desired way of life. This strategic sequence is the very blueprint understood and successfully implemented by every generation that truly prospered. Robert, Karen, Marcus, and Zoe were not financially inept or unintelligent individuals. Instead, they simply conformed to what their respective eras defined as the markers of success and achievement. Their primary focus became projecting an image of arrival rather than cultivating the actual state of being financially secure. So as we conclude, here is a question I sincerely hope you will reflect upon deeply. Which particular version of this financial trap do you currently find yourself entangled in? Is it perhaps a home that disproportionately consumes your entire net worth, leaving little else? Could it be a lifestyle that continuously expands in lockstep with every increase in your earnings? Are your experiences, which feel like living life to the fullest, silently eclipsing your efforts to build lasting wealth? Or is it an aesthetic, a curated image, that projects affluence without truly accumulating it? Please share your thoughts below, not for judgment, but because articulating your trap is the crucial first step towards escaping it. And if this message resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might also benefit from understanding which generational financial pattern they're following.